Surrounded by delicate flowers, a mysterious book appears, the name of which is no longer possible to remember. In the background of a romantic scene between the main characters, a girl appears who clearly does not want to be part of this story. Time rewinds, as if someone decides to review events from the very beginning. The girl finds herself in the body of a villainess who constantly harasses the main character and earns the hatred of the main character. Before her appears a minor character, the villainess Juliet Orbitian. The girl realizes that she doesn't remember very well what should happen according to the plot. To survive, she decided to go into hiding and locked herself in the estate, avoiding the main character and her persistent admirer, enjoying carefree laziness. Suddenly, she is overcome with bewilderment when she hears unexpected words. A man appears in front of her and offers the girl a contract marriage. She greets the morning with joy, enjoying the beautiful day and fresh air. The nanny enters the room, surprised by her early activity and independence. The nanny notices that Juliet has been sleeping a lot lately and asks if she has anything special planned today, to which the girl enthusiastically confirms her guess. Today is the wedding of the Emperor and Empress, the main characters of the story, and Juliet is excitedly awaiting this event. The only thing she needed was the loss of modern technology, and now she is forced to sit within four walls without leaving. Finally, the opportunity to go outside in peace appears, and the girl literally beams with joy. Juliet enthusiastically invites the nanny to go on a trip with her. The nanny is surprised by her desire to leave the estate because she has not gone beyond its boundaries for so long, and the girl understands that this is truly unusual. The nanny admits that she was afraid that I would never leave the estate, and asks with surprise what other trip I had planned. Winsplet Orbetian, the family's second son, appears in the luxurious hall, surprised by her dreams of travel. Juliet is reminded that her father thinks it's time to stop turning down proposals, and she is surprised to realize what he is talking about. The girl states that none of the husband candidates are suitable for her and wonders what kind of partner would suit her, since all the candidates were carefully selected. Winsplet wonders who the girl can consider herself equal to, and a maid appears in the room with tea. Juliet repeats the question thoughtfully, wondering who could truly be her equal. She dreams of a man who will cope with the responsibilities of a husband, but will not control her life, and with a slight smile, I am surprised that this is all the girl wants. Juliet, remaining unattainable, evokes in her brother a weary admiration for her inaccessibility. She remarks with a smile that her brother is too romantic for such conversations. A ring appears on the table, reminding us that this is a marriage of convenience between noble families. Instead of wasting energy searching for love, it would be easier for both parties to simply play their roles. Juliet wonders if her answer sounded too vague, and her brother promises to convey her decision to their father. Despite everything, he sincerely wishes for Juliet to marry for love. The girl in the yellow dress, sprawled tiredly on the sofa, is deep in thought. Juliet looks up at the ceiling, contemplating the marriage that lies ahead of her. The thought flashes through her head that perhaps she should choose her own husband and start this rumor. A young man with blue eyes appears in her life, surprised that someone would actually be interested in this proposal. They find themselves alone at the tea table, and the atmosphere is filled with anticipation. Suddenly, she decides that this man will be her choice. The young man, with a slight smile, reports that he has heard rumors. The man calmly explains that he is ready to take on the role of a husband without interfering in her life more than necessary. He clarifies whether he understood correctly what kind of companion she is looking for. With genuine interest, he asks if his candidacy would suit her. The name Caesar Fairheim is on her mind, and she can't understand why he even appeared. Juliet is stunned and tries to figure out if he is really ready to marry her. The girl clutches the fabric of her dress, collecting her thoughts before an important conversation. Caesar, however, suggests an arranged marriage, slightly nervously. She asks again in surprise, not believing her ears. The man clarifies that an arranged marriage implies a lack of interest in a long-term family life. Caesar confirms his words, carefully placing the cup on the table. The man admits that he would not like to fall in love with anyone. Juliet squeezes her hand, trying to cope with her excitement, and looks at her interlocutor with surprise. Sympathy for the rejected young man appears in her eyes, and she mentally supports him. She remembers how she worried about him, but all her hopes were in vain, and now she is saying goodbye to her dream. The young man, sitting on the sofa, confidently declares that he is still the ideal candidate for her. He promises with a slight smile that he will be able to live up to her expectations. The girl speculates that perhaps the young man is being pressured by his family to marry as soon as possible. Juliet wonders how the Duke can be so soft-hearted, watching his sincere smile. She crosses her arms, makes a decision, and agrees to the proposed conditions. The Duke cautiously confirms that he agrees to a contract marriage. The girl explains that her family also insists on this marriage and offers a period of 2 years, as well as the condition that he will initiate the divorce. The Duke accepts these conditions with a slight smile. He promises that he will be the perfect husband for her for the next 2 years. A hopeful pink-haired girl ponders what could go wrong. Two people make an agreement by shaking hands and promising to support each other for 2 years. In a luxurious living room, they seal the contract, and the girl, with hidden anxiety, hopes that everything will really be fine. A stamp appears on the document, and a new stage begins. A contractual marriage with a love interest comes into force. Juliet carefully combs her hair, while caring advice about food sounds nearby. She looks thoughtfully at the nanny, surrounded by flowers, and seems surprised by her words. The girl, with a slight smile, reflects on the fact that the nanny is too kind. She turns to the table, noticing the fallen object on the floor, and doubt enters her thoughts. There is a seal on the floor, and the girl is surprised that everything happened so quickly. She sits thoughtfully, remembering how long she puzzled over how to tell her father the important news. The girl hesitantly starts a conversation over dinner, carefully cutting food on her plate. At a large table in a luxurious dining room, the upcoming marriage is being discussed, and the father listens attentively to his daughter. The father regretfully admits that he did not immediately understand the situation and mentions his daughter's meeting with the Duke. He reproaches his daughter for not telling him earlier and recalls with annoyance how he showed her portrait to other men, and the girl at that moment is surprised that her father has already sorted everything out. While the nanny is doing the girl's hair, she reflects on the fact that all the wedding preparations have already been taken care of by others, and the Duke seems to be truly madly in love. The girl agrees with what is happening with slight uncertainty, still not fully believing it. Two brothers stand side by side in confusion, and one of them indignantly demands an explanation of what happened. In a room with luxurious walls, a brother asks his sister in surprise about her decision to marry the Duke, and the girl looks at him in shock. Juliet reflects with anxiety on the suddenness of the upcoming marriage, not hiding her excitement. The older brother sadly says that his brothers feel abandoned. Juliet, with her head down, reminds her brother of his busy schedule at the palace, and the younger brother asks, offended, if she has become invisible to her. The brother explains that he came home immediately after learning about his sister's wedding, and emphasizes that his father personally helped him with this matter, and his other brother enthusiastically supports his words. The brother recalls with surprise that Juliet had previously not wanted to hear about suitors, and now does not understand how she became close to the Duke. The older brother realizes with a little sadness that their younger sister is getting married, and admits that even though she is already an adult, he still feels a little sad. The younger brother, with a serious look, suggests that Juliet talk alone. Juliet stops in the middle of the hall, and her brother calls her to him, and she answers hesitantly. Juliet looks at her brother with restraint, preparing to be frank. The brother, turning around at the door, doubts that his sister has truly fallen in love with the Duke. The red-haired girl, with a slight look of fatigue on her face, notes to herself that she foresaw everything that was happening. The young man with the same red hair looks at her with confusion, wondering about her thoughts. A man in a blue uniform appears against a background of flowers, and it becomes clear that Duke Fairheim already has a lover, about whom everyone has long known. The brother speaks with surprise about the Duke's unexpected decision to marry the girl, standing opposite her in a richly decorated room. The girl with green eyes calmly notes that this marriage is still one of convenience, and it doesn't matter to her who the Duke loves. The young man freezes in silence, unable to find what to say in response to her words. The young man anxiously admits to himself that what he wants most is Juliet's happiness. Juliet thinks with a slight smile that Jonslet is now scolding her. She understands that her brother sincerely wants a marriage for her in which she will be loved. Juliet is sure that she is not one of those who needs love. Her brother asks her with concern if she will regret it if she really does fall in love. Juliet notes with gentle irony that her brother is actually very sentimental, despite his stern appearance. The girl with bright hair smiles confidently, convinced that she will definitely be happy. She looks open and calm, assuring that there is no need to worry about her. Her brother pats her head with slight annoyance, admitting that she always makes him worry. He asks his sister with a smile to keep her promise to be happy. Juliet irritably straightens her hair, remembering how carefully the nanny styled it. She says goodbye to her brother with slight sadness, believing that she can be happy even without love. To the sounds of flowers and lights, the bride is invited to walk down the aisle, her dress gliding softly across the floor. Juliet, dressed in white and wearing a crown of yellow flowers on her head, stands waiting, surrounded by the scent of fresh roses. She takes the groom's hand, holding a bouquet in her other hand, and their gazes meet in solemn silence. Juliet, clinging to her groom, is amazed at his beauty, mentally noting that his face is dangerous to her health. She notices her older brother and father at the table, watching the ceremony with touching excitement. Juliet's heart is filled with wonder as to why they are so moved, given that they themselves have repeatedly pushed her to get married as soon as possible. Juliet, in a wedding dress with flowers in her hair, suddenly clearly realizes that she is really getting married. She answers her fiancé with slight hesitation, trying to look calm. The groom gently asks not to call him by his title, and at that moment a feeling of closeness arises between them. Juliet is a little embarrassed when he suggests calling him by his first name, but agrees. She internally notes that the groom is incredibly attractive up close and cannot concentrate on the ceremony. The groom watches her with restraint, and Juliet lowers her head, feeling nervous and confused. Against the backdrop of a wedding dress and formal shoes, the thought of an inappropriate proposal sounds. The groom, with sadness in his eyes, reflects that he mistakenly believed that the bride dreamed of marrying for love and that he himself was interfering with her happiness. Juliet, in her wedding dress, irritably notes to herself how angry she is about what is happening. She admits that the groom is so kind that it is even irritating, and if she really loved him, it would hurt her. The bride and groom, holding hands, hear the call to seal their vows with a kiss. Even though they know it's all just a formality, they still kiss to end the ceremony. The servants carefully comb and style the girl's luxurious hair, admiring her beauty. The atmosphere is filled with anticipation as everyone is sure that the Duke will be delighted with her appearance. A girl in an elegant dress stands up, ready for the big moment, surrounded by flowers and light. She collects her thoughts, realizing that the decisive hour has come. The room is decorated with rose petals, and a heart is laid out on the bed, foreshadowing the wedding night with Caesar. The young man, struck by her beauty, is ready to spend this special night with her, intended for newlyweds. The girl, surrounded by flowers and petals, admires Caesar with bated breath. She smiles with a slight sadness, thinking that real feelings will never arise between them because their union is not real. A call to Lady Orbetian rings out in the opulent hall, filling the atmosphere with tension. Caesar asks a question with a cold gaze, in which there is a sense of suspicion and caution. The girl, embarrassed and a little frightened, hurries to justify herself, tightly clutching the hilt of the sword in her hands. She appears before Caesar, and in her thoughts she notes that everything changed as soon as she entered the bedroom. The girl is horrified when she notices a multi-legged insect at Caesar's feet while he is drinking water. Without thinking, she grabs the sword and asks Caesar to remain still so that he can deal with this misfortune. Caesar watches her actions in confusion, not understanding what is happening. She rushes to justify herself, raising her hands and explaining that everything is not as it may seem. The girl insists that she has neither strength nor muscles and cannot pose a threat, unlike the strong Duke. Caesar asks in bewilderment why she grabbed the sword then. The girl, in a panic, points at the man, claiming that she saw a huge beetle next to him. The man asks in surprise if it really is a beetle. He looks away carefully, trying to understand what was meant. In his hand appears a ball of black thread, which could easily be mistaken for an insect. The girl looks at the ball in confusion, not understanding how it ended up there. She is confused because she was sure that she saw a beetle, and now she cannot understand what is happening. The girl is surprised to notice that her interlocutor is laughing, but she is reassured, assured that there are no bugs and there is nothing to be afraid of. The man apologized for the misunderstanding, and the girl replied that everything was fine, and there was no need to apologize. She notices that the man has turned away and is perplexed, because their conversation was quite ordinary. The man admits that when the danger had passed, he noticed the girl's overly transparent clothing. The girl recalls that, according to the plot of the novel, Caesar was immune to the beauty of other girls except the main character. She decides to find something to cover herself with, wondering what she should wear. The young man, embarrassed, calls out to the girl, asking her to stop. The girl turns around, surprised to hear that there is no suitable clothing to be found here. The man offers to bring her something so she can cover herself. The girl suddenly loses her balance and fear appears in her eyes. She begins to fall, unable to stay on her feet. Once on the floor, she is surprised to realize that she feels no pain. The girl is surprised to realize that, despite the fall, she did not feel any pain, and looks up at the man. Caesar looks at her with slight confusion, not expecting such a turn of events. He is concerned about her condition, his gaze full of care. The girl, still embarrassed, answers hesitantly, trying to pull herself together. Her hand accidentally touches his bare chest and she feels his heartbeat. The man, noticing her touch, excitedly says her name, and a special atmosphere arises between them. The girl turns away in embarrassment, thinking that the man's robe must have slipped and fallen open. She notes with surprise that she had not noticed before how quickly her heart began to beat. The man, surrounded by flowers and pink light, can't believe that one careless fabric can change the atmosphere between them so much. Caesar calls the girl by name and she, a little confused, answers him. The man notices the girl's blood with alarm and tells her about it. He worries about her condition, asking if she is really okay. The girl is surprised to find herself thinking that her gaze is constantly drawn to his bare chest. She covers her mouth in embarrassment, and a nosebleed appears on her face, and she tries to explain what happened despite her excitement. The young man asks anxiously if Juliet's nosebleed has stopped, his gaze full of concern. Juliet, hiding her face in a scarf, reflects on the fact that such a handsome man is dangerous both with and without clothes, and he apologizes and promises to be more careful. They both sit next to each other on the bed, an awkward silence hanging between them. Caesar suggests opening the window to ease the tension, and she agrees. Juliet goes to the window, mentally apologizing for her awkwardness and avoiding his gaze. Opening the window, she enjoys the cool night breeze, which brings her relief. Juliet looks at the sky with admiration, noting its clarity next to Caesar. Their hands almost touch on the windowsill, and the cool breeze brings a feeling of freshness. Juliet is surprised to realize the closeness of his hand. Her heart skips a beat. She stands by the window in the moonlight, reflecting on her feelings and her own reaction to his touch. Caesar, looking at Juliet, remembers the moment at the wedding when he wanted to express his gratitude. Juliet turns to him, surrounded by flowers, and hears his words of gratitude. Juliet remembers the wedding with surprise, her gaze directed upward. Caesar tells how she took his hand when he was shaking, and she shyly replies that it was nothing. Juliet thinks with a slight smile that, despite the contract, he is still her husband, and considers caring for him his duty. Caesar laughs, his laughter filling the air, and Juliet is a little embarrassed. He wonders if she's been overly solicitous and smiles quietly. They stand together by the window, and Caesar says that each has his own reasons, preferring not to delve into topics that the other avoids. Caesar looks at Juliet with slight confusion, and silence hangs between them. He acknowledges her kindness, and Juliet looks at him with surprise and warmth. Juliet wonders why he insisted on an arranged marriage for 2 years. She remembers him trembling during their wedding kiss, and that moment is imprinted in her memory. Juliet knows that if she reveals that she knows the reason for his anxiety, he is unlikely to like it, and a tense pause arises between them again. He tells Juliet that he is counting on her for the next 2 years, and she agrees. Juliet is confused and wondering what they should do at night, as sleeping in the same bed seems awkward to her. A bottle of wine and 2 glasses appear on the table, which, according to the characters, should help relieve tension. Juliet enthusiastically offers to have a drink and chat a little, surprising her companion. He notes that they have to live together for 2 years under the contract, and it would be useful to get to know each other's habits, because in public they will have to portray a harmonious couple. Juliet smiles, realizing that people would find it strange if they knew nothing at all about each other. He warns that the wine is quite strong, and Juliet looks at him with interest, sitting on the sofa. Juliet confidently states that she can control herself, her posture is relaxed and calm. A slight smile appears on his face, surprised by her confidence. The wine flows smoothly into the glass, and the thought of an evening together seems like a good one to him. They sit opposite each other, discussing rigor in work and the preference for separating the personal and professional. Juliet, thoughtfully sipping her wine, remarks that if she were one of his knights, he would not be so kind to her. He smiles and says that for every mistake in training, hundreds of laps around the parade ground and sparring would be required so that the lesson would be remembered forever. Juliet smiles, surprised that a man with such a soft and gentle appearance can be so stern. She thinks for a moment, at a loss for words. Juliet admits that simple conversation is her greatest joy. She asks him with concern if something important has happened. He looks down and admits that he is not ready to share this yet. Juliet says with a soft smile that since they are in the same boat, they should be more open with each other. Caesar, looking at her thoughtfully, wonders why they shouldn't try to be friends. He advises her with a slight smile to go to bed, thinking that she has had a little too much wine. Juliet, slightly embarrassed, admits that she only drank a little. Caesar, sitting with a glass in his hand, assures that he is making his offer of friendship quite seriously. Juliet, looking down, sadly notes that she doesn't even have anyone to talk to. Juliet looks away thoughtfully, thinking that the nanny and Winslade are good people, but still something is bothering her. To those around her, she remains simply Juliet, without feeling any particular closeness or significance in their eyes. The real Juliet has already left this world, leaving behind only memories and sadness. Even without knowing all the details of the past, the heroine understands that she should not have been in this story. However, Juliet remained alive, but now another personality lives in her body. Winslade and the nanny continue to care for her, although she is no longer the same. Anxiety is brewing in her soul. One day those around her might realize that this is not the real Juliet. She decides that it is better to continue living without allowing herself to become attached to anyone. She dreams of having someone nearby with whom she can share her innermost thoughts without fear or pretense. Caesar looks at her with eyes full of tenderness and hidden feelings. In his gaze, she sees sincere sympathy and understanding. It seems to her that perhaps he recognizes himself in her, reflected in her fate. His first love became the Empress, and now he cannot allow himself to openly express his feelings for her. He decides to stay close, offering her his friendship. Juliet is sincerely happy about her new acquaintance. Her eyes glow with happiness. She thinks with relief that she has finally found a friend. Caesar asks her how she is feeling with a smile, and she assures him that she is fine, although she feels slightly drunk. Surprise appears in her gaze. Caesar is acting much more confident than she expected. Juliet turns to Caesar, and a confidential conversation is established between them. She openly admits that even when intoxicated, she never loses her memory. A girl with long pink hair stands in front of a young man who, with a slight smile, reminds her not to go back on her words of friendship. The young man, sitting on a carved chair, smiles confidently, promising to always keep his word. His image is surrounded by radiance and flowers, as if embodying modesty, honesty, and kindness. The girl, thoughtfully holding a glass, admits that she cannot doubt him, but still does not understand why he trusts her so blindly. She looks at the young man in surprise, reminding him that they have only known each other for a short time. Smiling shyly, she remarks that it is dangerous to blindly trust someone and admits to herself that she knows everything about him from the novella, but cannot say it out loud. There are treats on the table, and in the air hangs the confession that the heroine has heard rumors about her interlocutor. The young man listens with restraint, and the girl notes that his reputation is impeccable because he is not interested in gossip. Caesar admits with surprise that he did not know about such conversations. The heroine reflects with a smile that he was always only interested in the main character and fencing, and he didn't notice the rest. The girl can't help but laugh as she looks at the confused young man and silently calls him cute. In a luxurious hall, she unexpectedly confesses that she has loved one person for a long time, and this confession creates tension in the air. A young man sits on the edge of the bed with a glass of wine, lost in thoughts that his beloved has already married someone else. The girl with green eyes sympathetically understands why he no longer wants to fall in love. He confirms her guess by looking down and confessing his truth. A silence fills the room, filled with a bitterness that cannot be hidden in his voice. She understands that his feelings were too strong because he loved that woman for so long. Like any other love interest, he is unconditionally devoted only to the main character. The girl with pink hair looks closely at her interlocutor, noticing his sadness and assuming that he is having a hard time. The young man, with a glass of wine in his hand, calmly replies that he thinks what is happening is for the best. He reminds her with a slight smile that they are now married, and there is a note of reconciliation with fate in his voice. Memories take us back to childhood, where the heroine, Berticia, the hero, Camille, and Caesar were inseparable friends. At first, it was Caesar who was closest to Berticia, and there was a special bond between them. Everything changed when Berticia met the crown prince, who became her main love interest. The touch of two hands becomes a symbol of how the heroine inevitably falls in love with the crown prince. Caesar is forced to simply watch what is happening from the sidelines, hiding his pain. Deep down, he knows he can't be between them. The heroine's inner voice is outraged by his passivity and considers such excuses to be weakness. The young man, looking down, is about to start a new life, but does not understand what it means to be truly happy. His surprise and confusion reveal that he is not ready for change and does not know how to move forward. The girl touches the young man with concern and sympathy, wondering what could be happy in his situation. She looks into his eyes with concern, not understanding why he continues to keep everything to himself, and the young man reacts to her sincerity with surprise and confusion. In the midst of a blooming garden, a young man watches the departing couple with sadness in his eyes, giving in for the sake of their happiness. But a doubt arises in his soul: is this really how it should be? The couple enjoys their happiness without thinking about the feelings of the one left behind. Even after the happy ending, they continue to coo carefree like lovebirds. And Caesar remains alone, suffering in solitude. His heart is squeezed with pain and torment, as if wrapped in rose thorns. The girl with fiery hair, full of emotion, leans towards the young man, not hiding her indignation. She takes his face in her hands and he, smiling shyly, tries to remain calm. His blue eyes reflect an attempt to convince himself and others that he is okay. The man in the black suit interrupts this self-deception, not allowing one to hide one's true feelings. Juliet resolutely urges people not to hide their pain, because it is impossible to be happy when their loved one belongs to someone else. She admits that in his place she wouldn't even be able to eat for a whole week due to grief. The girl with fiery hair admits that in her place she would not hold back her emotions and would create a storm in the house. The young man asks with sadness in his eyes if it is because of him that she is angry. The girl resolutely confirms her feelings, not hiding her irritation. The man admits that even under the contract she remains his wife, and this evokes an internal response in him. He hangs his head, admitting that he is indeed not okay. In his thoughts, he admits to himself that the pain he is experiencing is very strong. Juliet reflects sadly on how long he loved another and sympathetically calls him a poor, rejected boy. She admits that she can console him because she does not have feelings for him, but advises him not to raise this topic again, especially in front of his future lover. The young man notes with a slight smile that for the new girl such words will be like a knife to the heart. He tries to convince himself that nothing bad will happen because they will remain friends. The girl calmly says that after the divorce they will become nothing to each other. The young man bitterly realizes that even their friendship exists only within the framework of a contract. A girl with a joyful smile dreams of travel and new friends, surrounded by flowers and the light of hope. She enthusiastically shares her plans, and the young man next to her silently watches her enthusiasm. Anxiety arises in his soul because he is afraid of once again becoming unnecessary and forgotten. The girl, with a slight smile, discusses the fact that after a divorce, one should not maintain a relationship with one's ex-husband in order to avoid generating rumors. She feels tired and sleepy, and the young man reflects that the former spouses are perhaps doomed to separation. Suddenly she remembers that she only has one glass left and exclaims in surprise at the realization. The girl with green eyes turns around in surprise, not understanding what is happening. Caesar calmly stops her, deciding that she has had enough drink. She calmly notes that he has already drunk a lot. The girl, with slight protest, claims that it's not that much. Caesar agrees with a smile that there is only one glass left. The girl, tired and relaxed, lies on the bed and sighs heavily. Juliet with red hair wakes up with a heavy head, unable to open her eyes. She is surprised that such a hangover is possible from just a couple of glasses, and convinces herself that she drank only a little. Her hand feels something unusual nearby, causing surprise. She finds herself in the arms of a man, pressed against his naked body. Confused, she notes that it is fresh and pleasant here, even very so. The girl continues to feel warmth and freshness, touching his chest, not fully realizing what is happening. A red-haired Juliet wakes up with a heavy head, blaming herself for the fact that the bride got drunk after a couple of glasses on their wedding night, and cannot remember what they did. She feels something strange and doesn't dare open her eyes. Touching a man's naked body makes her feel embarrassed, and thinks about an unusual hangover cure. Hearing Caesar's voice, she realizes that it is he who is nearby. Caesar, with a blush on his cheeks, asks to stop touching him, embarrassedly covering himself with a sheet. Juliet sits up in bed in amazement, realizing the unexpectedness of the situation. The red-haired girl, looking down in embarrassment, apologizes to the man sitting next to her, who is holding the sheet. Juliet mentally reproaches herself for her behavior, believing that even in a half-sleep one should not touch another so brazenly, and admits that she will not be able to justify herself if she is considered perverted. Both of them, still in a tense atmosphere, look towards the door, realizing that the maids are already waiting for them behind it. The man, without turning around, orders the brine to be served as it helps with a hangover. Juliet notices with concern that the man probably feels unwell after drinking and hesitantly inquires about his well-being. The man, wrapped in a sheet, goes into the depths of the room, saying that he will join a little later. The girl anxiously recalls how she overindulged last night, and now she feels that he finds her unpleasant. She anxiously asks not to be angry with her, feeling guilty for what happened. Clenching her hands, she admits that she fears his anger because of her actions. The young man, turning away in embarrassment, explains that this is not the case and wonders why she thinks otherwise. He apologized for the misunderstanding, admitting that he was used to sleeping wrapped in a blanket and wanted to lie down when she fell asleep, and the girl asked with surprise about his habits. Caesar, still embarrassed, sits next to the girl, not knowing how to continue the conversation. The girl listens to her interlocutor's words with surprise, not immediately understanding what he is getting at. She admits that she usually goes to bed, and then suddenly adds that she does it naked. Hearing this, the girl is shocked and cannot hide her surprise. Against the backdrop of a sunny morning, she hesitantly asks if it is true. Later, sitting in the garden, she yawns tiredly, thinking about what happened. Inwardly, she laments her hangover and the fact that Caesar is driving her completely crazy. The idea of someone sleeping naked confuses the girl, and for the first time she considers the need for separate rooms because she has never seen naked men before. She admits that this is truly shocking. Caesar remembers with slight embarrassment that he usually goes to bed naked. Juliet realizes that he was completely naked, and this causes her inner trepidation. She knows that separate bedrooms are not an option because if Winslet or the nanny find out, they will start to worry, and now she doesn't know what to do. Juliet decides that she needs to clear up the situation that happened this morning to make her feel better. The girl notices with alarm that he continues to avoid her. She dines sadly alone, realizing that even their meal was served separately. Every time she meets him in the house, he hurries away, not wanting to cross paths. Juliet assumes that he is probably ashamed, but she cannot fully understand the reason. Inwardly, she decides that this cannot go on any longer. With determination in her eyes, she realizes that it is time to settle this issue once and for all. Caesar breathes a sigh of relief as he stands in the opulent hall, but his face is filled with worry. He sadly realizes that he won't be able to return to the bedroom tonight. The girl with long pink hair, standing alone, reproaches herself for the failure on her wedding night and cannot even look him in the eyes. Caesar decides to just spend the night in the office to avoid any awkwardness. He intends to think about what is happening later, but is suddenly interrupted. Juliet, calmly holding a cup of tea, notices his lateness and calls him by name, maintaining an outward calm. Caesar enters the room with excitement and notices a girl with pink hair sitting with her head down. She carefully takes the cup of tea and says that she would like to talk. The girl, having collected her thoughts, notes that they both have issues that need to be discussed. She is the first to admit her guilt, apologizing for having gone too far, and the young man in response admits that he could not look her in the eyes. The girl looks up in surprise, not understanding the reason for his embarrassment. She anxiously asks why he couldn't do it, and internally fears that he thinks she's perverted. Caesar clenches his fist, collecting his thoughts, and begins to explain the reason for his behavior. He admits that he feels ashamed of the disgrace that happened. Looking down sheepishly, he says that he understands her expectations of an ideal husband. The girl listens with surprise and alarm to his confession of his own self-loathing. Caesar explains that this is why he unconsciously continued to avoid her. In conclusion, he sincerely apologizes, expressing regret for what happened. The girl sighs heavily, remembering that she came to scold him for avoiding her. Looking at the embarrassed guy, she realizes that she can't be angry anymore. She gives in internally, admitting to herself that she is disappointed and worried, but she cannot be angry. The girl remembers that she herself was also wrong and suggests forgetting about what happened. Caesar carefully asks if she is angry and offers to sleep separately if she wishes. She resolutely rejects the idea of separate rooms, not wanting to be separated. Juliet thoughtfully drinks her tea, thinking that if she starts behaving like this on her honeymoon, not only the Duke's family will be worried, but her own as well. She notes with a touch of irony that he seems to have forgotten that their marriage was declared a love match, and notices that he is more shocked than she thought. Caesar excitedly asks if she would mind if he slept naked at night. The pink-haired girl, looking up shyly, asks an unexpected question to the man in the elegant jacket. She sighs heavily, accepting the situation and expressing understanding. The man calmly responds, assuring her that he understands her too, even if she accidentally touches him in her sleep. The girl, covering her face with her hand, decides not to attach importance to the awkward topic and suggests forgetting about it. The man agrees with her with a slight smile, calling her by name. The girl notes to herself that he is kind even to those women for whom he feels nothing, and admits that he is a truly good person. Juliet, sitting by the fireplace, is distracted by someone's call and turns around. She looks up in surprise when someone's hand reaches out to her. The young man gently touches her face, their gazes meeting in the silence of the decorated hall. He looks at her carefully, as if remembering or noticing something. The girl, slightly confused, feels his touch and does not understand what is happening. Caesar completes his gesture, and the girl lowers her head, embarrassed and touched by his attention. A young man with a kind smile announces that he has removed a speck of dust from a girl's hair, surrounded by radiance and flowers. The girl, covering her eyes with her hand, is amazed by his dazzling appearance and internally notes that he is shining. She thanks him but admits that her attempts to avoid him have been excessive, and he calmly agrees, calling her by name. The man suggests setting rules, and the girl asks in surprise what rules he means. Against the backdrop of wedding flowers and a blue sky, the girl clarifies that she is talking about the rules of married life. Caesar, looking thoughtfully to the side, repeats to himself the words about the rules of marriage, as if pondering their meaning. Juliet reflects thoughtfully on the fact that the awkward situation could happen again, since she and her husband still don't know each other well and were forced to sign a contract. She gets up from the couch and admits that they never discussed the details of their married life. The man agrees with her words, acknowledging that she is right. Juliet suggests continuing the discussion in the bedroom, turning to him with determination. She is ready to start the conversation with a slight smile and confidence. The girl turns around in surprise, as if expecting further developments. The pink-haired girl looks worriedly at the young man, who is clearly embarrassed and at a loss for words. She is surprised when he suddenly reaches out to her, and her face expresses confusion. Inwardly, she wonders what he is doing, not understanding his actions. Caesar apologizes to her, trying to explain the reason for his behavior. He admits that he is not used to sharing a room with anyone, looking away shyly. The girl notes his sincerity and vulnerability with surprise and slight embarrassment. Juliet, covering her mouth with her hand in embarrassment, cannot believe that someone can be so nice. The young man apologizes for his sudden abruptness, still embarrassed by what happened. She understands that his awkwardness is completely natural and gently takes his hand, promising to be there. The girl notes with a warm smile that her hand is now touching his and looks for confirmation in his gaze. Caesar, with a slight smile and a blush on his cheeks, says that he understands her. She admits that she is only now beginning to feel the reality of their marriage, agreeing with his words. The pink-haired girl smiles, thinking that even if their alliance is contractual, it is still important to her. She walks down the hall with a young man, realizing that she now bears his last name and belongs to a different family. The girl looks at her companion and confidently says that difficulties await them ahead, but together they can overcome everything. The man answers her with a gentle smile, making it clear that he sees nothing in her that he might not like. He takes her hand, and she says that she has already come up with several rules for their life together. The girl seriously emphasizes the importance of these rules, and the man agrees with her, allowing her to take the initiative. Juliet, with a serious expression on her face, discusses the need to clearly define and explain the Duchess's duties. She confidently notes to herself that this point is the most important. At this time, a rule is established between the heroes prohibiting physical intimacy, and their hands accidentally touch. The man is silent, and the girl, with surprise and slight excitement, wonders what is happening. A tense silence fell over the room, and both heroes looked uncomfortable, each lost in their own thoughts. The girl recalls with surprise the ban on physical contact, and her interlocutor asks whether there are any difficulties with this. A young man is considering a contract that includes a clause requiring him to play the role of an ideal husband in public. The girl confirms that everything is correct and looks forward to continuing the conversation with interest. Caesar explains that if they want to appear as a good couple in the eyes of society, they cannot avoid touching. He prepares to propose a solution with a slight smile, accepting the situation with a grain of optimism. The young man suggests introducing a condition that touching is only allowed with mutual consent, and the girl listens to him attentively. She thinks about his words, realizing that there is meaning in them. After the wedding, a man is obliged to accompany his wife to social events, which involves appearing together in public. Holding hands and touching each other becomes a necessity to maintain the image of a couple. During dancing, physical contact also plays an important role and is inseparable from social life. The girl enthusiastically agrees, realizing the validity of his arguments. Juliet muses that the no-contact rule seems pointless, since her interlocutor wouldn't do anything inappropriate. She enthusiastically agrees to add a clause about the permissibility of contacts with mutual consent. The young man accepts this decision calmly. She notes for herself the consistency of this approach by writing down a new condition. The thought of marriage makes her realize how much needs to be taken into account in living together. Caesar suggests ending it here and invites the girl to add her own rules. The young man smiles thoughtfully, as if considering the proposal he had just heard. He notes that his conditions are not that numerous, and the girl carefully writes them down at the table. She suggests adding a clause banning lovers on the side, repeating the word in surprise. Juliet enthusiastically agrees to this condition, expressing her approval. In her imagination, a strict ban on any relationships on the side appears, which she confirms with a decisive gesture. She writes down a new rule, specifying that any outside love affairs are prohibited for a period of 2 years, and the young man watches this with surprise. Juliet reflects on the fact that after the divorce, each of them might have a new lover. She notices with surprise the silence of her interlocutor and wonders about the reason for his reaction. Inside, she feels his intense gaze on her, which makes her feel embarrassed. The young man looks upset, and the girl begins to suspect that he is offended. She cautiously asks if everything is okay, noticing his downcast gaze. The girl hears a negative answer, but cannot understand why he still looks so pouty. The young man asks to show him something with slight excitement, watching the girl among the bright flowers. He asks, embarrassed, why she is leaning so close to him. Juliet looks closely at her interlocutor and asks him to blink. There is surprise in his eyes, and he does not understand why this is necessary. She remarks to herself how beautiful his eyes are and insists that he blink faster. The girl warns that she is going to think about it, and the young man watches her actions with relief. Juliet asks with a soft smile if the pain has passed, her gaze filled with care and warmth. Caesar, with slight embarrassment, reminds that if an eyelash gets into her eye, she should immediately talk about it, wondering why she hid it. He, still embarrassed, confirms her words, lowering his gaze and tugging at his lips with his fingers. An awkward silence falls in the room, and the young man, covering his mouth with his hand, announces that he needs to leave. The girl asks in surprise if it still hurts, and he, looking down, admits that the pain is still there. Caesar quickly apologizes and leaves the room, leaving behind a slight feeling of embarrassment and uncertainty. The girl stands in a luxurious hall, clasping her hands in confusion and silently reflecting on what happened. She turns around and wonders why men's ears turn red so easily. In her mind, she compares the current situation with the past, noting that she hasn't noticed anything like this in Winslade. The girl notices the young man's return and asks with slight surprise if he has returned too quickly. She asks if he managed to cope with the problem and is relieved to hear that everything is fine now. The young man, with a slight smile, offers to make another proposal, waiting for her consent. Caesar accepts the invitation to continue the conversation with a slight smile, and the girl listens to him attentively, sitting opposite. She waits with interest to see what new condition he will propose, anticipating his words. The man, a little nervously, carefully folds his hands and begins to talk about the next point. The girl looks at him in surprise when he suggests spending their leisure time together. In the golden light of the window, a vase of bright flowers sits on the table, filling the room with morning peace. Leona, in a scarlet dress, looks at Caesar, sitting opposite her in surprise, and an unspoken question hangs between them. Caesar looks at his interlocutor with slight confusion and sadness in his eyes, not finding the right words. The vast estate is immersed in the golden sunset, and the thought of how lonely it can be within its walls becomes especially clear. Leona, dressed in a blue dress, is thinking by the window with a slight smile, not understanding who Caesar takes her for, because before she managed perfectly well alone. A girl with shining eyes confidently declares her independence, and a young man watches her in surprise. The guy with a slight smile on his lips is about to say something important, and his gaze becomes softer. He looks forward thoughtfully, embarrassed and unsure of his words. The red-haired girl freezes, looking away in surprise. She sits on the sofa opposite the young man, and a pause filled with quiet anticipation hangs in the air. Leona asks herself with doubt and a little anxiety whether Caesar really wants to spend time with her. The young man in the blue vest rises from his seat, his voice sounding particularly respectful and cautious. The guy looks at his interlocutor with excitement and uncertainty, fearing that his proposal was too bold. She, slightly embarrassed, admits that she sometimes imagined such moments. When your heart belongs to someone, even a simple touch fills the day with warmth. Together at the table, they enjoy their favorite dishes and light conversation, forgetting about everything around them. A boy and a girl spend time together, riding horses through a sun-drenched meadow. She smiles as she remembers the simple joys that make life truly special. Caesar watches Leona with slight anxiety and surprise, trying to understand her intentions. She explains with a gentle smile that she simply decided to clarify his wishes without putting anything offensive into her words. The young man, a little embarrassed, looks away, choosing the words to answer. He admits that he may have been too frank and quietly apologizes. Leona watches his reaction with confusion, not fully understanding what exactly happened. The red-haired girl feels misunderstood again and wonders why he is pulling away. Caesar, slightly confused, responds to Leona's appeal without looking up. Plucking up her courage, she excitedly asks if she can hold his hand. There are books on the table between them, and surprise from the unexpected question hangs in the air. Leona, without looking away, persistently waits for an answer, and the young man gets lost in her eyes. His face flushes, and his embarrassment becomes noticeable even in the silence of the room. The girl, with a slight smile, notes to herself how naive and sincere he is in such moments. Leona gently intertwines her fingers with his, and the light falls softly, like a blessing. She looks at her interlocutor, assuring him that his behavior has never caused her discomfort. With a quiet smile, she admits that she tries to be the ideal wife for him. Caesar, a little embarrassed, sits opposite, not knowing how to respond to her frankness. His gaze fills with warmth as he looks at the girl with gratitude. Leona asks him not to apologize first anymore, her eyes shining with sincerity, with determination and kindness in her voice. She looks forward thoughtfully, and her gaze reflects a slight anticipation. The words she utters seem to hang in the air, leaving an aftertaste of something left unsaid. Leona turns to Caesar and says that there is only one truly important condition. Outside, soft light falls on the flowers, filling the room with a sense of anticipation of change. She confidently states that the decision was made by herself, without anyone's pressure. Caesar admits with a little sadness that it is important for him to simply be there, even if he is not loved. Leona, surrounded by the scent of flowers, reflects on the importance of sharing both joy and pain with another person. Her smile warms as she adds another kind thought. Caesar, in a luxurious hall, notes that his contract wife has the most beautiful smile in the world. The guy with golden hair smiles shyly, and a slight blush fills his cheeks. Leona looks at him with admiration, thinking that his smile is truly incredibly beautiful. The guy, thoughtfully leaning on his hand, suggests adding another rule, and she listens to him attentively. Caesar, with a gentle smile, reminds that he should always be heard to the end. There is a sheet of paper with the rules of family life and a dagger on the table, and the girl asks if she has understood the meaning of what was said correctly. The guy, a little embarrassed, tries to explain his real intentions. The name Juliet resounds in the luxurious room, filling the space with special meaning. Leona, sitting on a chair among the flowers, looks surprised and hears that she is incredibly sweet. The girl with red hair is shocked and cannot immediately understand what is happening. She stands in the semi-darkness, not believing her ears and doubting whether she understood everything correctly. Thoughts are confused by surprise, and the heart beats a little faster. The young man with golden hair smiles softly, finishing his thought and looking at his interlocutor. Leona, still confused, suggests adding a new rule to their agreement. The sheet of paper with the rules of family life appears on the table again, and the girl thinks about what is happening. A bright silence reigns in the room, filled with the scent of flowers and a golden glow. Leona flushes with indignation, not hiding her emotions. The guy with yellow hair shyly asks for a rule that prohibits calling his wife cute. The girl firmly decides that she will not give in on this issue under any circumstances. In business relationships, Leona believes there should be clear boundaries. She fears that if the young man continues to behave this way, feelings may flare up between them. Leona categorically refuses, not allowing the established rules to be broken. Caesar stands next to the silver-haired woman, his gaze downcast as if lost in thought. Leona, wearing a blue dress, smiles, her face glowing with genuine joy. The girl resolutely refuses to make concessions, considering this a violation of honesty. The guy asks doubtfully whether it is really worth adding such points to their rules. Leona confidently places her hand on the sheet, confirming her determination. Caesar listens in surprise as she prepares to add another condition. Leona, with slight embarrassment and seriousness in her eyes, formulates a new demand. The young man listens attentively, catching her every word. The guy carefully writes down the rules on a piece of paper, trying not to miss anything. New lines are added to the list, prohibiting calling one's wife cute and showing excessive attention to other women. Caesar promises to strictly follow the established rules, his gaze full of determination. Leona secretly hopes that he will really try because some girls might get it all wrong. After much discussion and doubt, order finally reigns in the house. The evening light softly falls on the room, where peace and comfort reign. Caesar and Leona lie in the same bed, each immersed in their own thoughts. The boy with yellow hair looks at the ceiling, his face expressing slight confusion. He sits up on the bed, adjusting his hair, and the girl watches him from the other side. Caesar reflects on what happened, not fully understanding what to do next. Leona is lying on the bed, and the young man decides that he should get dressed first so as not to embarrass his wife. Caesar quickly puts on his robe, trying to behave as delicately as possible. He turns around to make sure everything is okay, and his gaze stops on the girl. The guy sits on the edge of the bed, watching the carefree expression on her face. He thinks that she is about to open her shining eyes and break the morning silence. Leona slowly opens her eyes, and her gaze reflects surprise and slight embarrassment. Sitting on the bed, she looks at Caesar shyly, surprised by his attentive gaze. The golden-haired boy smiles slightly as he thinks about the girl asking questions in her soft voice. He can't help but smile just looking at her, and he himself is surprised by this feeling. In the silence of the night, the young man lies alone under the blanket, remembering how he used to try to drown out the loneliness in this house. Caesar looks at the girl and notes to himself that she is unusual. Leona lies on the bed, and the guy gently touches her hair, mentally acknowledging that she filled his thoughts and heart. In the dimly lit room, he remembers how even then he smiled because of her, and he wonders why she doesn't recognize him. Caesar remembers with hope how he came to the Count's mansion, expecting changes. Leona, smiling sheepishly, listens to him talk about her strange behavior, as if she were seeing it for the first time. The guy, sitting on the edge of the bed and holding the girl by a lock of hair, admits that the memories hurt him and left a deep mark. He notes with regret that Leona doesn't remember anything because she drank. The girl recalls her words about how slowly seeping love can be more terrible than the one that strikes at first sight. Caesar holds a lock of Leona's hair tenderly, not letting go of his feelings no matter what. The guy looks at the girl with hope, imagining their future together. He closes his eyes, allowing emotions to fill his heart. Leona, tired, says that she has to go and lowers her eyelids. The girl falls asleep with a slight smile on her lips, plunging into a peaceful sleep. A new morning dawns outside the mansion window, filling everything with light and hope. The girl stretches, waking up in a soft bed. Leona feels good about having slept well and looks forward to the sunny morning. She notices that the guy has already left and guesses that he went to training. After the exercises, Caesar sits down at the table and continues working on important matters. The girl, sitting on the bed, thinks about how she could help him. There is a knock at the door and Leona allows entry, looking forward to a new day. The maids enter the room, and the eldest of them asks with concern whether the night went well. Leona, sitting on the bed, replies with a smile that she slept well, and the maids prepare for further work. The head maid, smiling reservedly, stands in front of the girl, ready to help. Behind her stand 3 young maids, May, Chelsea, and Brianna, each looking a little nervous. The girl thanks him for his concern and asks if the Duke has already had breakfast. Leona looks away thoughtfully, contemplating the start of a new day. The sun is shining outside the window, but she is surprised that the guy hasn't had breakfast yet. Leona thinks that after his morning training, Caesar should have eaten by now. The head maid says with a smile that they can still have time to have breakfast together. The girl wonders whether this is worth paying attention to, but she still thinks about it. She decides that if they pretend to be a happy couple, then they should behave accordingly at home. Leona is determined to maintain her reputation as the Duke's wife. The whole family rarely gathered around the large table because the father and older brother were busy, and the younger brother preferred to have breakfast with the bride. Leona is surprised that she has to have breakfast alone. The maid explains that she was simply amazed because the Count always cherished his daughter. The girl remembers how her father shed a sea of tears at her wedding and realizes that the maid is right. She sadly notes that her father was always busy and nothing could be done about it. Leona is surprised to realize that their family didn't even have picnics together. With slight embarrassment, she admits that she cannot remember a single instance of a family vacation. The maids react to her words in amazement, not believing in such loneliness. The girl says with a smile that as a child she was looked after by a nanny, and her second brother sometimes played with her. She wonders if this is why the original Juliet was so easily attached to those who showed warmth. Leona wonders if this is the reason why the heroine began to trust those around her so quickly. Deep down, the girl understands that both she and Juliet had no one they could truly rely on. A call to Milady resounds in the spacious room, filling the morning with light and care. Leona looks at the maid in surprise, not expecting to hear such words. The maid takes the girl by the hand, promising to take care of her more than anyone else. The senior maid confirms her words with touching seriousness, expressing sincere devotion. The rest watch what is happening with surprise and excitement, not immediately understanding what is happening. Leona, a little embarrassed, tries to find the words to express her feelings in response. The huge hall shines with the golden light of the chandeliers, filling the space with solemn luxury. The table is laden with exquisite dishes, and there is a slight sigh of relief in the air. Leona, sitting at the table, realizes that her words were not taken quite as she expected. She was always thought of as a spoiled aristocrat who grew up in love and care. In a difficult moment, the girl begins to get closer to Duke Fairheim, finding support in him. The yellow-haired boy looks at her with a warm smile, and a feeling arises in her heart. Leona sits at the table, barely containing her emotions, her fork thrust into her lips. Caesar watches the girl closely, thinking about the current situation and not knowing how to justify himself. The girl turns in profile, her face expressing confusion and uncertainty. Leona understands that she will not be able to explain herself in front of so many servants and feels constrained. She decides to just continue eating to avoid any unnecessary questions. A slight smile appears on the girl's face, and the atmosphere around becomes softer and brighter. Leona holds a spoon with shining eyes and a slight smile, enjoying sharing breakfast with Caesar. The girl is internally worried, hoping that her words will be enough for this situation. On the table among the roses, morning silence reigns. A feeling of reciprocity hangs in the air. The yellow-haired boy, slightly embarrassed, admits that he is happy to share a meal with the girl. Caesar's cheeks flush. He is embarrassed and touched by what is happening. Leona, still a little confused, realizes how unusual and important this morning is for her. With slight embarrassment, she suggests that they always have lunch together at any time. The boy with yellow hair smiles, a soft blush lighting up his face. The girl is surprised at how easily he agreed and feels her cheeks flush. There is a sunny garden outside the window, and Leona invites Caesar for a walk after breakfast. The young man calmly agrees, thoughtfully mentioning the coolness outside, but she insists on privacy. Leona admits that she would like to take a walk, just the two of them, her hand nervously clutching her cutlery. At a long table strewn with dishes, the boy and girl fall into silence for a moment. Leona looks at her companion in surprise, waiting for his reaction. The guy promises to finish breakfast faster so as not to keep the girl waiting. She's a little embarrassed, but quickly regains her composure, allowing him to take his time. Leona looks at Caesar with a soft smile, warmth appearing in her gaze. Outside the hall's windows, a sun-drenched garden stretched out, heralding a new walk. A boy and a girl are walking along a garden path, enjoying the sunny morning and each other's company. Leona stops and turns to her companion with excitement, looking around. Caesar assures her that the servants will not interfere, since she has clearly expressed her desire to be left alone. The girl admits that she is a little worried. Her gaze becomes thoughtful. Leona asks if the guy wants to discuss something important, slightly nervously. With determination, she confirms her readiness to talk, her eyes shining with anticipation. Caesar and Leona stop in the middle of a blooming garden, surrounded by bright colors and morning light. The guy collects his thoughts, his lips trembling with excitement. The girl looks at her companion with surprise and slight anxiety, waiting for his words. In the garden between the roses, a question is asked about possible troubles, and the answer is not long in coming. Leona admits with a tired smile that she was misunderstood and that they thought she was treated badly at the estate. The girl remembers how she accidentally mentioned her sympathy for kind people and now thinks that the rumors have already spread. On a sunny path, a guy advises a girl to calm down first. Caesar gently asks Leona to tell everything in order so that he can understand the situation. Leona looks at her interlocutor with surprise and slight anxiety, collecting her thoughts. The girl takes a deep breath, preparing to explain everything that happened. She finishes her story, and the morning light softly illuminates the garden lanterns. The guy looks thoughtfully into the distance, pondering what he heard. Leona stands in the luxurious hall, listening in surprise to the request to tell about her past. The girl with red hair asks again, confused, not expecting such a question. She shyly replies that there is nothing interesting in her past, avoiding details. Caesar, a tall man with yellow hair, calmly says he just wants to hear her story. He smiles softly, his gaze full of goodwill and patience. Leona, blushing slightly, hesitates, not knowing where to begin. She coughs sheepishly and agrees to tell about herself, since her interlocutor insists so much. The girl hesitantly reaches out to Caesar's palm, and a subtle sense of support is born between them. The sunny garden fills with peace, as if the light itself carefully frames their conversation. She reflects that the young man already has a brief idea of her fate, since the case of Count Orbedian is known to many. Leona sadly recalls how she lost her mother as a child due to postpartum complications. Memories are tinged with darkness, and the loneliness of the past once again covers her soul. A little girl with scarlet hair watches her sick mother lying in bed, the room filled with silence and anxiety. After her mother's death, she suffers from loss as she watches her family leave the funeral in the rain. The child feels like an outsider among her grieving brothers and father, standing alone under a black umbrella. She feels like deep down her family blames her for what happened. As an adult, Leona sadly admits how difficult it was to survive that time. The girl smiles weakly, realizing that she didn't see everything with her own eyes, and she's embarrassed to accept sympathy. She and Caesar are sitting in the garden, and she remembers that the family quickly got used to her presence because everyone had their own worries. The memory comes to mind of how the previous owner of the body fell ill and left, giving way to a new soul. Leona reflects that Juliet cannot be considered a villain. Circumstances simply worked against her. With quiet sadness, she notes how unfortunate it is that everything turned out this way. Caesar asks what prompted her to go into seclusion, whether there was a special reason. The girl replies that she closed herself off immediately after moving into this body. The guy squeezes his hand on the railing, and she understands that her actions were dictated not by the event, but by the desire to survive. Leona admits to herself that she just wanted to live. Caesar watches her closely, his gaze reflecting surprise and sympathy. She looks away, and the soft light gently glides across her face, bringing a feeling of lightness. The girl smiles internally, convincing herself that she was only joking. With a smile, she tries to diffuse the situation and bring some lightness back into their conversation. A barely noticeable smile appears on the lips. The voice sounds calm and confident. Caesar asks worriedly if something terrible has happened in her life. Leona is slightly surprised, and a thoughtful look appears in her eyes. The garden is silent and sunny, and she mentally denies that she has experienced anything terrible. The guy smiles with relief when he hears her answer. However, doubts arise in the girl's thoughts, because there is one but. Caesar asks with interest to explain what exactly she meant. He recalls that the maid Amber and the butler are well aware of the arranged marriage. Leona is surprised to realize that her secrets are not so hidden after all. She wonders if she really didn't give herself away with a single gesture. There is a short pause between them, full of unspoken thoughts. Internally, the girl comes to the conclusion that the maid sincerely wants to establish a relationship with her. Caesar, surrounded by the care of a servant since childhood, could not hide his unrequited love from her. Leona reflects that this is precisely why the woman tries to help despite all the troubles. In the silence of the garden, a new thought about the consequences of her decisions arises in the girl. The guy listens attentively, and she decides to ask him a personal question. Caesar is a little embarrassed when Leona notices his late breakfast. The morning light fills the palace, and the air echoes with the echo of their recent conversation. The garden is bathed in the soft glow of the morning, and a light butterfly flutters among the flowers. They sit next to each other on the bench, and a tense silence hangs between them. The girl with scarlet hair looks away thoughtfully, her gaze full of doubt. The boy with golden hair approaches her cautiously, trying to understand her actions. In the rays of the sun, under the arches of the gazebo, a confession is heard, confirming his guess. Caesar smiles with relief, realizing that he was not mistaken. Leona shyly asks not to do this because it makes her feel uneasy. He apologizes to the girl with slight regret. The guy explains that he just wanted to have breakfast with his wife, but Leona feels powerless before his logic. She admits that having breakfast together feels too personal. The girl says that she won't be able to get up at dawn, but she doesn't want him to go hungry because of her. The young man listens attentively, and she suggests a compromise. He reminds them of the rule of their contract, to spend time together. Among the flowers of the garden, the question is heard whether he will continue training after breakfast. Caesar confirms what will happen if nothing urgent comes up. Leona eagerly notes that this is a great opportunity to be alone together. The guy asks if this option suits her. Against the backdrop of a flaming rose, the girl notices that she will not be able to pay attention to him during classes. Caesar sheepishly replies that even her mere presence will be enough for him. Leona notices his awkwardness and decides that watching him is the perfect solution. The guy is surprised by her words, and she rushes to justify herself. The girl insists that she had no intention of simply standing and watching. Caesar prepares for the next step with slight confusion. Leona watches him with interest, waiting for him to continue. The young man turns around, not fully understanding what is happening. In the garden, among the flowers, a call to the girl is heard, as if someone is calling her. The majestic gazebo is illuminated by light, and she confidently responds with consent. Sitting next to Caesar, Leona asks him to be gentle with her because she considers herself inexperienced. The guy thinks, his gaze becomes serious. The girl feels the atmosphere between them changing and cannot understand the reason. She looks at Caesar with anxiety, afraid that she said something wrong, but he asks her to extend her hand. Leona hesitantly offers her hand, allowing him to take it. Caesar, sitting on the steps, carefully watches the girl standing next to him. He carefully takes her hand, their fingers touching. The young man turns away, remembering how excited he was at her accidental touch. Leona notices that his hands seem accustomed to the sword. He excitedly asks permission to hold her hand a little longer. The girl, slightly embarrassed, agrees. Caesar looks closely at her palm and notices calluses from training. Leona is surprised to feel the strength of his arms. The young man carefully touches her fingers, and a slight pain runs through her skin. He asks anxiously if he hurt her. The girl, slightly embarrassed, assures that everything is fine. Caesar looks at her with confusion and warmth. A blush appears on his face when he realizes something important. The guy apologizes, admitting that he got too carried away and may have caused inconvenience. Leona clenches her fist, realizing that in reality, everything is much more complicated. She turns away, feeling like everything inside is mixed up. Her skin still retains the warmth of his touch, and her heart beats faster. They stand next to each other, and the air between them is filled with a slight tension. Leona stands up decisively, trying to change the subject. The girl suggests getting down to business, hiding her excitement. Caesar nods in agreement and they move on together. Before them opens a view of a sun-drenched garden, full of peace and fragrant flowers. They walk along the path, their steps echoing in the soft silence of the day. The girl feels a slight awkwardness, lowering her gaze to hide her embarrassment. Leona starts the conversation cautiously, not finding the right words. The guy turns to her, waiting for her to continue. She looks at her companion with anxiety, fearing that he will disappear again. Caesar, with a slight, almost warm smile, assures that he is not going to run away anywhere because he has already understood well enough how she feels about him. Leona looks at him with noticeable relief, feeling the anxiety recede, and is glad that this time everything ended peacefully. The guy slows down, looks down, and seems about to say something important, which makes Leona's heart skip a beat. Caesar asks the question with slight hesitation, in which one can hear a desire to know her true opinion. Leona looks up in surprise, not expecting him to even be capable of asking such a direct and personal question. He continues to stand opposite her, not moving, waiting for her answer with almost boyish impatience. The girl asks again with slight surprise if he is really talking about her, because she cannot believe her ears. Leona stops, shocked that Caesar thought she was deliberately running away from him. The girl looks at him with slight irritation, behind which is hidden excitement, and does not know how to explain her feelings. Her embarrassed voice can be heard in the garden, in which one can hear an attempt to justify herself and maintain her dignity. Leona says with an awkward smile that she was simply afraid of accidentally scratching him, hiding her embarrassment behind a light joke. The guy responds with a restrained smile, observing her confusion and not trying to dispel the awkwardness. But even behind this calm smile, he hides a doubt that he cannot get rid of, no matter how hard he tries. Leona stands against the backdrop of a clear blue sky and garden lanterns, her eyes reflecting anxiety and timid hope, as if she were opening her soul. The red-haired girl, clutching her hand to her chest, looks at Caesar, while yellow flowers bloom around her, adding to the tension of the moment. A man with golden hair, dressed in a luxurious suit, watches her with gentle sadness, as if he is afraid of destroying the fragile balance. Leona notes to herself that his smile was not just sad, there was a bitterness in it that made her heart involuntarily clench. Caesar stands in silence, watching her slowly walk away, unable to change what is happening. An image of another girl flashes in his memory, smiling brightly and serenely, as if reminding him of something lost. Caesar sees a girl with silver hair in front of him and, holding his breath, is afraid to disturb her peace with even a word. Raindrops flow down his face, mixing with unexpressed feelings, and his lips tremble with the desire to say what cannot be said. Leona and Caesar stand opposite each other on the alley, where lines from a familiar novel come to life in the girl's memory, filling everything around with a slight nostalgia. The red-haired girl slowly walks away, leaving behind a feeling of determination and pain, as if she is taking a step into the unknown. Leona clenches her fist, trying to cope with the surging emotions, but her fingers tremble treacherously. The boy with yellow hair forces a smile, trying to appear carefree, although there is emptiness in his chest. Leona turns away, realizing that a smile doesn't always mean joy, and feels a slight sadness at the thought. The girl nervously explains that she wasn't avoiding the guy, her voice trembling as she asks him not to smile so bitterly. Caesar looks at her in confusion, unable to find words, and only the silence between them speaks volumes. Leona wonders if it is possible for a person to truly desire nothing, and a sadness creeps into her gaze. In the back of her mind, an image of a shadow appears, whispering that perhaps he is simply tired of enduring it. Caesar himself does not notice how his heart becomes hard as stone, protecting him from the pain that he cannot acknowledge. The guy looked at Leona with concern, realizing that he might have offended her, and quickly apologized. Leona turns away tiredly, asking him not to apologize anymore because it's becoming difficult to hear. Against the backdrop of the greenery of a well-kept garden, the girl reflects that behind his outward politeness, Caesar hides an excessively low opinion of himself. She decides that it is easier to adapt to the circumstances than to argue with him, because sometimes silence saves. At this time, their relationship is quietly discussed in the house. The servants whisper that much is already known about them. The guy takes a step forward, as if trying to overcome the invisible wall separating them. Leona thinks that wanting to hold someone's hand doesn't always require words, and there's a subtle determination in her voice. The girl gently explains that for the sake of the servants, they should at least appear closer on the outside than they actually are. Their fingers intertwine carefully among the pink flowers and morning light, creating the illusion of true tenderness. Leona feels that if she continues to push him away because of her own embarrassment, that bitter smile will return again. Caesar, with a slight blush, realizes that he sees something more in her eyes than just concern for appearances. The red-haired girl looks away, mentally admitting that she doesn't want to see him hurt again. Against the backdrop of the white mansion, their hands are still clasped, and the embarrassment makes the air between them thick and warm. Leona suddenly realizes how awkward their argument over who would let go of her hand first is. The boy with yellow hair, without noticing it, blushes, trying to hide his confusion. Caesar notes to himself how natural she is in her movements, and this simplicity makes him slightly admire her. He reflects that being a contract wife is a difficult role, requiring much more from her than it seems. Leona hears his soft compliment, and a warm, almost homely gleam appears in her eyes. The red-haired girl freezes, shocked by what she heard, and a slight surprise colors her face pink. The guy reminds her of the rules against saying certain words, and a slight but sweet awkwardness ensues between them. Leona wonders sheepishly why he called her charming for no reason, feeling her heart treacherously quicken its pace. A red-haired girl stands in front of Caesar, and together they decide to add a new word to the list of forbidden words, as if playing a mysterious ritual. The guy remarks with a gentle smile that Leona is being too cruel, but there is warmth and good nature in his voice. Leona, lost in thought, compares his dazzling smile to the spring sun, feeling an irritation that strangely warms her soul. Caesar can't help but laugh. His mood brightens, and the shadow of anxiety seems to dissolve in the sun's rays. The summer garden glows with a soft light. The air is filled with the aroma of herbs and tranquility, as if nature itself was holding its breath, watching them. A boy and a girl walk down an alley holding hands, and this simple gesture fills them with a warm feeling of mutual presence. Their fingers are tightly intertwined, a timid closeness and unspoken support felt in this touch. Leona suddenly remembers the important conversation, and her gaze becomes serious, as if a ray of sunlight had slid across the blade of thought. The girl decides to share with Caesar what has been troubling her for a long time, and there is a quiet determination in her voice. The golden-haired boy responds with a soft smile, showing that he is ready to listen to every word. Caesar brings up the topic of other forms of intimacy with a hint of trepidation, his eyes shining with seriousness and embarrassment. Leona looks at him in surprise, not immediately understanding where he is going with this, and this creates an awkward tension in the air. The girl guesses that they are talking about something personal, and her thoughts become tangled like thin threads. The guy touches his lips shyly, his cheeks flush, and this gesture seems especially touching. The unspoken question of their first kiss hangs in the air, and the pause between them becomes almost palpable. Leona freezes, at a loss for words, because sometimes silence speaks louder than confession. Caesar's eyes reflect excitement as he realizes for the first time that a single kiss can have such meaning. His lips tremble as he repeats the word to himself under his breath, as if tasting it for the first time. Leona, surrounded by flowers, looks away, her cheeks flushed, her heart pounding somewhere in her throat. The girl squeezes her hand hesitantly, not knowing how to react to such a frank conversation. She hesitantly admits that this issue does require discussion, trying to hide her embarrassment. The golden-haired boy calmly suggests that they should choose a special place for their first kiss, as if suggesting they create a new chapter in their story. Caesar smiles, and his gaze takes on a soft determination mixed with timid tenderness. He carefully reaches for the girl's hair, as if he wants to feel the silky strand with his fingertips. His fingers lightly touch the curls, and in this touch there is not boldness, but reverent awe. Leona freezes, her heart beating faster, because this gesture seems almost magical to her, as if everything around her slows down. The boy, shyly, asks permission, his voice soft and careful, like a petal falling on the water. The red-haired girl doesn't look away and slowly agrees, allowing the moment to fill with a special warmth. Leona adjusts her hair, thinking that they are already holding hands, and perhaps this step was inevitable. Caesar asks with a smile where their first meeting took place, suggesting an unusual place. Leona agrees that the proposed option is quite suitable. They walk together, and the girl wonders why the guy chose this particular place. Caesar looked at his companion with slight confusion, not rushing to answer. A mysterious smile appears on his face, as if he is keeping something secret. In the garden, among the flowers and columns, there is a sense of mystery, because the answer remains unsolved. The sun's rays illuminate the majestic palace, filling the morning with a soft, almost magical light. Peace and comfort reign inside. Every corner holds its own stories and memories. Leona puts down her pen with relief, feeling satisfied with the work she has done. A ray of sunshine slides across her cheek, reminding her of the warmth that gradually fills her heart. Leaves rustle outside the window, and the girl finds comfort in this sound. Her thoughts return to the conversation that still lives in her memory. Caesar appears again before her inner vision, his soft gaze causing a slight tremor. She realizes that the day is just beginning, and there are still many unknown moments ahead of them. The girl takes a deep breath, feeling a quiet hope awakening inside her. The world around seems brighter, and the heart is filled with warm, barely perceptible joy. Leona looks up to the sky, letting the morning light touch her eyelashes as if accepting a new day. The butler watches the girl with restraint, holding a neatly folded sheet of paper in his hands. In the room with the bookshelves, a question is asked about her past experience, and she confidently confirms her words. The girl explains that after her mother's death, she had to take over the Count's affairs, immersing herself in new responsibilities. She recalls how she sometimes dealt with management issues, skillfully combining this with her studies. In her thoughts, Leona admits that she used skills from her past life and voluntarily helped with the work, not wanting to let her family down. Leona looks at the butler carefully, holding a pen in her hands, and he apologizes to her with slight awkwardness. The man regrets his words, and the girl internally notes that she does not feel any longing for her mother, because in this life, she did not even know her. Papers and books are neatly laid out on the table, and Leona asks to tell her about other duties so that she can learn everything while she is here as the Duchess. The girl, with a slight smile, agrees to study all the details, except for family secrets, which must remain secret. The butler clenches his fist, realizing that he might be the one who would have to leave this place if circumstances changed. The man admits that her words upset him and looks at Leona with barely concealed sadness. Leona looks away thoughtfully, feeling slightly surprised by his sincerity. The girl wonders why everyone in this house is so sentimental, as if everyone here has a hidden softness of soul. She confirms that she and the Duke do indeed have a common opinion on an important issue, and this makes her job easier. The butler quietly promises to serve her faithfully, despite any changes, which brings with it a feeling of security. Leona agrees with a smile, acknowledging that this approach suits her and inspires confidence, so they decide to move on to discussing other tasks, continuing their collaboration without further ado. In a spacious dressing room, a girl chooses clothes among exquisite outfits, enjoying the soft light. Leona tries on a formal suit, feeling unusual in her new look, as if discovering a new side of her personality. She smiles, catching an interested look and a question about whether she likes this outfit. The girl recalls that she was so absorbed in learning her duties that she did not think at all about the rules of married life. Leona reflects that Caesar didn't say anything, but it still makes her think about something important. She understands that if she doesn't start spending time with her husband, she risks becoming a bad wife in the eyes of others. The maid admits to being surprised by Leona's request for workout clothes, but the girl explains that it's just a comfortable outfit. Leona smiles, agreeing that most noble ladies would never wear something like this. The girl asks if she can go and receives gentle permission from the maids. Leona looks content and calm, preparing for the next step, feeling a little nervous. She is escorted to the training ground, where the atmosphere is sunny and the gentle noise of training can be heard. In the arena, Caesar is already preparing for training. wiping sweat from his forehead and watching the girl. The rays of the sun illuminate the majestic palace, promising a new day full of possibilities and surprises. Leona stands waiting, her gaze full of determination and slight anxiety before the upcoming meeting. The spacious arena is decorated with flags, and the atmosphere around is filled with the energy and attention of the upcoming event. A boy with yellow hair meets a girl, and their gazes meet in the shadows of the hall, awakening a slight excitement. Caesar looks a little embarrassed, but tries to act confident, hiding his inner anxiety. The girl with red hair smiles, confirming her readiness for what is happening and her inner confidence. Leona expresses doubt with a slight smile, fearing to interfere with the training and harm the process. The boy with yellow hair answers confidently, reminding her that the girl herself is familiar with the sword and its rules. Caesar explains that under observation, the knights work even harder, not allowing themselves to relax for a moment. The girl recalls how, during her arrival, everyone worked with redoubled zeal, and swords crossed in the air, causing admiration. Against the backdrop of the majestic building, one can hear the thought of the impeccable reputation of the Blue Knights of the Fairheim family, and the doubt whether there could be lazy ones among them. The guy notes with a smile that in any group there will always be at least one such person, and that's normal. Leona looks away thoughtfully, reflecting on what is happening and her own management skills. The boy with yellow hair looks confidently at the girl, expressing faith in her abilities and inner strength. Caesar smiles sincerely and warmly, his mood noticeably lighter from communicating with Leona. Sunlight floods the training ground, where thanks are heard from the girl for her attention to the knights. The arena continues to move, weapons ringing in anticipation of new events, filling the space with energy. Swords cross in front of Leona and the boy, and the girl suddenly remembers something important, concentrating. Leona, having made up her mind, speaks of her desire to take part in the duel, surprising the boy with yellow hair. Caesar anxiously asks the girl to abandon this idea, considering it dangerous for herself. One of the knights, smiling, invites the girl to fight him, attracting the attention of those around him and creating a slight intrigue. The yellow-haired boy, feeling the tension, is forced to apologize for his friend, blushing slightly. Leona enthusiastically agrees to the challenge, and the guy reminds her of the seriousness of the warriors and the possible danger for the girl. The red-haired girl, without losing her confidence, decides to act in her own way, showing determination. Leona offers Caesar to become her rival, assuring him that he will be able to control the power and will not harm her. The guy with yellow hair is surprised and does not immediately understand how to react to such a proposal, becoming embarrassed. One of the knights sheepishly admits that he would not dare point his sword against the girl, respecting her skill. The girl reminds that everyone knows about her skill with a sword, and this gives her confidence. Caesar remembers how she already spoke about this and mentally compares himself with the Duke, considering his body not strong enough. Leona laughs, explaining that she was just comparing them because her body isn't as strong as the guy's, and it's funny. The knights recall with surprise that the last time the guy didn't even touch the girl during the duel, marveling at her skills. Caesar asks with slight confusion what is happening and how to proceed next. One of the knights, smiling, suggests discussing personal matters in private so as not to embarrass the others, showing tact. The yellow-haired boy and Leona find themselves in the spotlight, unsure how to react to the sudden situation. Both are embarrassed, their faces flush, and the atmosphere becomes slightly awkward and tense. The knights quickly justify themselves, assuring that they did not think anything unnecessary, and agree with the girl's proposal. The yellow-haired boy and Leona feel awkward, thinking about how low they might appear in the eyes of others. After a short pause, they return to work and the call to action sounds, filling the arena with concentration. A scream is heard from behind the gate, disturbing the peace of the yard and drawing attention to what is happening. Caesar and the red-haired girl find themselves alone at the massive doors, continuing an important conversation. The guy with a slight smile assures that he is speaking seriously without hiding his excitement and inner trepidation. Leona asks, slightly offended, why it is so difficult for him to agree to a duel with her, expressing dissatisfaction. Leona stands next to Caesar, looking embarrassed and slightly annoyed, while the boy looks awkward and confused. Caesar, looking down, admits that he has no excuse, and his face expresses slight embarrassment. The red-haired girl is annoyed that the guy is still avoiding fighting her, and it's starting to get on her nerves. Leona sadly reflects that if they had actually spent the first night together, she wouldn't have been so upset. The girl decides to tell him that their first night didn't happen because her husband simply didn't answer her. The guy looks at Leona in surprise, and she confidently declares that they can't allow so many misunderstandings between them anymore. Leona, slightly embarrassed by her behavior, decides to be more restrained, but she is amused by the guy's reaction. Caesar trustingly and sincerely admits that he believes the girl, despite her jokes and teasing. The girl watches the guy with interest, her gaze becomes softer, and her heart beats more calmly. The guy thoughtfully considers whether he will react the same way to the words of another woman if they break up. There is indecision in his eyes, he cannot immediately find the right answer. Caesar confidently declares that this will not happen, and Leona looks at him with surprise and slight trepidation. Caesar looks at Leona with sincerity, admitting that he does not want to know any women but her. The girl asks again, surprised and confused, not believing what she heard and feeling a sweet excitement. Leona tries to clarify whether the guy really intends to remain alone after their breakup. The guy agrees with slight sadness that this is probably how it will be, accepting the inevitability. The girl gently retorts, reminding him that time heals even the deepest wounds and that this brings comfort. Caesar admits that he knows all this, but he cannot fully come to terms with it, experiencing internal tension. Two silhouettes stand side by side, their steps seeming to freeze on the border between past and future, filling the moment with significance. The guy looks at the girl, thinking that their time is not over yet and there is much ahead. A soft, genuine smile appears on Caesar's face, filled with the light of hope and quiet joy. Leona looks at the guy with surprise and awe, not believing what is happening and feeling a little nervous. The girl, still not fully understanding what is happening, tries to find words that will express her feelings. The guy says with confidence that neither time nor circumstances will be able to take away the happy moments they spent together. Leona, with a serious expression on her face, suggests adding another rule to strengthen their understanding. A surprised question about the new rule is heard in the room, and the atmosphere becomes tense. Caesar smiles, his gaze softly approving and warming. The girl is a little confused, thinking about her words and the hidden meaning of the new rule. Leona feels that her proposal may be too risky and daring. The guy agrees with her concerns, realizing that the rule is important for him as well. Leona ponders what will happen if she starts acting like an ordinary wife. The girl resolutely rejects this thought, considering it impossible for herself. The guy looks closely at Leona, waiting to see what decision she will make. Caesar, with a slight smile, wonders if their contract might become too formal if they constantly think about the term of the agreement. Leona, slightly embarrassed, hears that she can always refuse if she doesn't like something. The girl is surprised to realize that now she does not have to limit herself to the framework of a contract wife. Caesar sets a new rule with a serious look, and Leona smiles and thinks that the guy will soon start acting playful. Their fingers intertwine in a gesture of agreement, and the girl calmly agrees to follow the new order. Leona, with a slight smile, suggests trying to live by the new rules. Against the backdrop of the towers, an apology is heard for talking about the contract, but the guy wants to add something else important. Leona looks at Caesar with interest and anticipation, ready to listen to everything he has to say. The guy looks at the girl with tenderness, getting ready to share his feelings. A slight smile appears on his face, his gaze filled with hidden emotions. Leona and Caesar stand opposite each other. The girl is surprised and slightly confused. A sudden gust of wind ruffles the girl's hair, and she covers her face with her hand, trying to figure out where it came from. The guy looks at her with slight anxiety, his eyes expressing uncertainty and concern. A warm smile blossoms on Caesar's face, and it seems as if sunlight and flowers are shining around him. Their steps sound in unison as they stand side by side on the mosaic floor. Leona walks along the carpet next to Caesar, a slight smile lighting up her face, and the guy watches with interest. He looks away, his thoughts filled with the recognition that soon everyone will know the truth, which will turn out to be a lie. Night falls outside the palace windows, and the luxurious hall is shrouded in silence and anticipation. A quiet chuckle is heard from the table among the books, filling the room with a slight mystery. The red-haired girl laughs happily, her eyes shining with joy and anticipation. The guy appears in the doorway, his gaze full of tenderness and a slight smile. Leona stands on a dais, and Caesar with yellow hair looks down at her, and there is a slight tension in the room. The girl sits down next to Caesar, her eyes shining with excitement. She remembers the agreement to fight with swords. After much persuasion in the hall, the guy finally gives in to the girl's persistence, agreeing to her terms. Caesar, with a slight smile and a hint of embarrassment on his face, realizes that he has been drawn into her game. Leona mischievously thinks that sometimes the world needs a little blackmail, and the guy meekly accepts her rules. The girl reminds him that he is the commander of the famous knights, and such a chance only comes once in a lifetime. Her gaze is full of determination. Caesar, with a slight smile and surprise, asks if she really wants to fight him in a duel. The girl enthusiastically confirms her desire, clenching her fists and beaming with excitement, and the guy watches her with a slight smile. Leona remembers being scolded for scrapes as a child, but that didn't stop her desire for adventure. The guy is surprised that Count Orbedian allowed the girl such liberties. His gaze becomes softer. The girl thinks for a moment, a slight shadow of memory lighting up her face. Caesar looks at Leona with slight confusion, a short pause hanging between them. In the luxurious hall, Leona admits with slight nonchalance that her father does not know about her actions, because he is too busy a man. She explains that her father is rarely at home, so she never shared her secrets with him. Leona wonders in surprise why everything turned out this way, her gaze becoming thoughtful. She admits that she realized long ago that her father would never have allowed her to do what she liked. A soft smile appears on the girl's face because she is sure that her father loves her and worries about her. Bitterness is reflected in her eyes because she understands that the father does not know how his child lives or does not even suspect her fate. Leona is thinking about a serious problem, and the guy carefully holds her hand, despite the possible awkwardness of the moment. Caesar says doubtfully that the girl's father's expressions of love do not bring her happiness. The boy looks at Leona with concern, thinking about her words about her father's love. The red-haired girl looks away thoughtfully, and Caesar asks if her father knows what she's really like. Leona, turning around, decides to continue the conversation since this topic has been raised. She acknowledges that her father speaks of love, but notes that Caesar, although he has only known her for a short time, understands her much better. In an old photograph, Leona sits among the men of her family, the faces in the portrait faceless, as if the past has been erased. Caesar and the girl sit next to each other, their legs almost touching, and flowers bloom around them. The yellow-haired boy promises to find out more about Leon, his gaze full of determination and tenderness. Leona and Caesar sit next to each other, an atmosphere of trust and anticipation hanging between them. The boy and the girl look into each other's eyes, their feelings becoming more and more obvious. Their hands intertwine, and the girl realizes that she is now accepted as she is. A girl with red hair freezes among blooming flowers. Her heart beats faster, and everything around is painted in soft pink tones. The silence of the night envelops the majestic palace, and the sky is strewn with stars. Caesar and Leona sit side by side on the carpet in a luxurious hall, the atmosphere filled with anticipation of a frank conversation. Caesar turns to Leona, his gaze full of attention and slight anxiety. Leona, a little embarrassed, is about to talk about her experiences, her face expressing excitement. Sweets, letters, and delicious treats sparkle on the table, creating a feeling of coziness and celebration. Leona looks at Caesar hopefully, waiting for his approval of her question. Caesar looks at Leona with surprise and slight excitement, not fully understanding her intentions. Leona, a little embarrassed, tries to find the words to explain her feelings. There is uncertainty in her gaze. She wonders if she is really ready to take this step. Leona reminds him that Caesar doesn't like noisy gatherings and crowds of people. Her voice sounds soft and caring. Caesar kindly and compassionately says that one should not do what is against one's will. Leona looks at the man with surprise and awe, realizing his sincerity and care. Leona reminisces about unpleasant women from her past, realizing that she does not want to return to her old life and dreams of peace. Despite her inner resistance, she understands that she must appear at the tea party. Leona finds herself surrounded by other ladies, feeling tense and hiding her emotions. She smiles, mentally reminding herself of her task. Leona decides that if she and Caesar look like a happy couple, it will help them both. She notes that even without pretense, there is already mutual understanding between them. Leona turns to Caesar with determination and a slight smile, and he listens attentively to her words. Caesar, looking thoughtfully ahead, speaks about his loved ones, as if reflecting on something important. A genuine smile appears on Caesar's face, and the atmosphere between them becomes warmer. The majestic hall is filled with light. The decision remains with the interlocutor. A gentle sunset can be seen outside the window, painting the room in pink tones. Leona, tired after a long day, falls asleep peacefully, surrounded by soft light and flowers. Leona lies on the bed, her face calm, and delicate flowers bloom around her. Caesar gently strokes the girl's head, showing care and tenderness. The guy with cold blue eyes looks at Leona, his gaze full of thoughts. He turns away thoughtfully, and anxiety appears in his soul. After the engagement, Caesar began to receive regular letters from Bertici, which haunted him. At this time, the girl with long white hair walks away, hiding behind the door. Caesar sits on the bed next to Leona, remembering her letters and her failed marriage. The boy with yellow hair looks away thoughtfully, feeling that Berticia was acting strangely. Memories take him back to the first time he saw that girl, and his gaze reflects surprise. However, the girl's heart already belonged to the heir to the throne, and the guy feels lonely. On their wedding day, he was overcome with despair and found no other way out but to go to the tavern. The guy in the dark cloak puts his mug down on the table, trying to drown his pain in the drink. The boy with yellow hair, hiding under the hood, carefully adjusts it, looking wary and tense. Leona grabs Caesar's hand abruptly, her gaze lowered, and the mug with the drink remains on the table. The guy turns around in surprise, not understanding what exactly is happening. The girl with red hair asks a question without raising her head. Her voice sounds quiet and uncertain. Caesar confirms her guess, and Leona continues to hold his hand as if not wanting to let go. Leona smiles. A soft light illuminates her face, and she invites the guy to share this special moment with her. Caesar, still hiding under the hood, confusedly and with slight embarrassment agrees to the unexpected proposal. The guy remembers their first meeting, which remains especially vivid in his memory, although it seems that only he keeps this memory. Leona lies on the pillow, her eyes closed, and thoughts of that day make her forget about the letters and everything else. The boy with yellow hair looks at her with a slight smile, his gaze reflecting warmth and tenderness. After that meeting in the tavern, he learns that the girl is looking for a husband, and this discovery gradually changes his thoughts and plans. His hand reaches out to the paper, as if his heart is telling him to take the first step. Caesar looks away thoughtfully, considering the possibility of marriage with Leona among the luxurious walls of the library. His hand confidently signs the contract, which is for 2 years, as if sealing his fate for a limited time. He understands that he cannot connect his life with a girl just out of curiosity, so a temporary union seems like a reasonable choice to him. The guy sits on the bed next to Leona, his palm gently touching her head, a mixture of uncertainty and hope in the air. Caesar looks at the girl with a slight smile, wondering if he could one day become a real husband for her. Leona gently takes his hand, and a quiet, tremulous intimacy arises between them, full of trust and warmth. The young man looks at the girl with anxiety and worry, not understanding what exactly is going on in her thoughts. The girl, smiling and with her eyes closed, holds his hand tightly, pretending to be asleep, and he notices with surprise that she is not sleeping at all. The guy stands in the luxurious hall, still confused and worried, trying to catch her mood. Gradually, a gentle smile appears on his face as he looks at the girl and realizes how important this moment is for him. She continues to hold his hand. Her face is calm and happy, and an atmosphere of comfort, warmth, and trust reigns around her. Outside the windows, the palace is shrouded in silence at night, and the guy decides to postpone the conversation until she wakes up, wishing the girl sweet dreams and a peaceful night.